Hi Chris, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on your channel.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me. As I said to you, I've been excited all day to interview you. Um, so anyone that's watching this, I'm so excited to have Pastor Chris Wickland on. I saw Chris speak at the Unite the Kingdom Christmas Carol concert, and they had loads of speakers, different priests and pastors. But I was with my mum watching it, and your speech just captivated me. And I said to my mum, I remember saying to her, I have to interview him. So just in a nutshell, Chris, you were practicing, this was quite a long time ago, but you were practicing witchcraft.
Yes, yeah,
You were heavily involved in the occult,
yeah.
by your words. You were going down the wrong path, you were taking drugs, you had suicidal thoughts, and there was an incident where you tried to take your own life. You drove your car 60 miles an hour off a cliff, and
That-
miraculously, you heard the voice of God telling you, you're not dying, you're not going to die because I've got work for you to do.
That's right. Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, it just gives me chills, and I just can't wait to hear your story. And now, obviously, you're a reverend, you're a pastor doing God's work. So let's start from the beginning. Let's rewind right to the beginning. Tell me
Okay.
tell me everything.
So my kind of story really starts when I was very young, as far back as I can remember. As a child, I had lots of strange paranormal experiences that used to frequent themselves about me, and of course, because of that, that then led me to question what is the meaning of life? You know, why am I here? Clearly, what I was learning at school by science, maths, and English, I could see that there was more to life than that. And because of that, I was very disrespectful to my teachers. I mean, this is like, even at sort of junior school level, I was an absolute terror. I was awful. No, I really was. I was so rebellious because I was so messed up by these experiences that were happening to me. I couldn't talk to anyone about it because no one would understand it. Um, so I was very much kind of stuck in my own world and trapped with all this kind of paranormal activity going on around me, and it was quite dark stuff.
Can
Um,
I can I just ask you just there, because obviously I'm a psychic medium, so this is my realm. What paranormal experiences were they?
Apparitions, but more what I would call a demonic side of things, very dark, things that were coming to me in the middle of the night. So it's not something I talk about hardly ever at all because it's really quite nightmarish. But that's the kind of stuff that happened to me as a child, and so growing up, that really messed me up. Um, but it led me on to a quest as to the meaning of life. And so when I was probably around about, I remember being 9 years of age, I'd go to to the library and read books on psychology and all this kind of stuff because I was desperately trying to figure out what is it. And
Yeah.
then it was probably when I got to my early teens, when I was about 13, 14, that I realized that the realm that I was looking for was the spiritual realm. And then I realized, that's what it was. So um, at school, we had some friends and we did all kinds of, got up to all kinds of shenanigans and we did things like Ouija boards. And there was one time where we did a Ouija board um, in my parents' house and they didn't know about it. And 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 basically we did this seance and then suddenly but these two back curtains to the extension, they all rose up and there was a blue figure kneeling there. Everybody freaked out, ran out the room, literally running out of the house screaming. Um,
Wow.
and so that for me, that was like, so this is it. This is what I want to press into because this is this spiritual realm, the spiritual reality. Um,
Yeah.
so after that, I started then reading a lot about the occult, witchcraft, and I joined a cult called the Rosicrucians. Um,
What
and you
was it
got
called? The Rose.
Rosicrucians.
Okay.
It's basically the occultic side of Freemasonry. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, so it was, and
How
even go on.
how did you get into that? Like, how did you find out about it?
Um, I think my, I think I just met a girl at school and she was into the occult and she basically said, "Oh, she got a magazine by these guys. You should check them out." And I'd met some people that my grandma knew, who were devotees of that kind of sect, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, and so I already was aware about it. And because, I was really wanting to get into all of this kind of stuff in a very deep way, and I got myself into really dark stuff. And so, for example, I remember one particular night when I was probably about 17. This was just before I became a Christian, but I was about 17, and these guys were like picking on me. We were hanging out some shops at night, and these guys were picking on me. And so I went up to their car, and I spoke in demonic tongues, walked anti-clockwise around their car, and cursed it, and said that in New Year's Eve, this car, something really bad's going to happen to you guys in this car. And sure enough, New Year's Eve came. They were all driving down the road, and it was about 12 o'clock at night. A fox ran out in front of the car. They turned the wheels to avoid it, but then the car locked, and then it spun, lost control. Everybody got flown out of the car, and all that kind of stuff. So no one died or anything, but they were pretty badly beaten up, broken bones and stuff like that. And that was the kind of stuff that I was involved with. So I was
So,
really on the ultra dark side of of all of this kind of stuff.
so you were casting spells and into black magic, and
Yeah.
um, I've dabbled in that a long time ago, and I think that's why I was so compelled to speak to you. And so it actually manifested. It actually happened.
Mm, yeah. So I even my friends at school and out of school, I was kind of like known as the Dark Lord. No one would want to go near me because I just used to freak everybody out. Um, and I was just a really dark, nasty, evil person because of all of that stuff. Anyway, one day oh yeah, and just prior to this experience that happened to me, there was one particular night because I was suffering from depression. My parents had divorced, and I was living with my mum. So at that time, and all of these things kept happening to me. This occultic stuff, and it was opening me up to a world of all kinds of issues, mental health issues, and stuff. And
Yeah,
I remember started, taking sort of like aerosol gas drugs and things, just to knock myself out.
yeah.
And then one night I woke up in my room, and this was peculiar. At the end of my bed was God and the devil. Now, God looked like this spiraling galaxy of light, and he was so pure and so holy and so perfect that I physically couldn't look upon him. And my eyes just rolled off him every time I looked at him. And it took every fiber of my being to try to gaze upon him, but I just couldn't because he was so holy and I was so not. And him and the devil were having a conversation about who was going to get my soul. And I kind of forgot about that and just sort of like, woke up next day and just carried on with my life. And and then a few weeks later, I was in the local forest doing a witchcraft ritual. And as I was coming home, suddenly this voice spoke to me. Now, in the instant that he spoke to me, I can't describe what it felt like. It was it was like I can only describe it as like iron filings and a magnet comes near and all the iron filings point to the magnet. It was like everything within me recognized that voice. Like somehow I'd heard it
Yeah.
somewhere before. And it was the voice of my creator. And I knew in the instant that he spoke, bear in mind I had no religious upbringing, I knew it was Jesus Christ. I knew he was the creator of the universe, and I knew that he was God. And he was speaking to me, and he said, "Stop what you're doing, come to know me, you can be forgiven for this." And because I'd had quite a lot of demonic manifestations appearing to me and talking to me and things, in one sense, this wasn't unusual. But what was unusual was the fact that it was God this time rather than some kind of low level demon. Um, and so that kind of, I thought that's odd. But I didn't understand. I couldn't quite get what he was going on about. What do you mean? Stop what I'm doing. Come to know you. You can be forgiven for this. I didn't know what it was that I was doing wrong because my conscience had been seared. I just didn't know what was right and wrong anymore. I just completely lost that ability. Um, and so I just ignored it. Which is like for most people would be like, what? But yeah, I just ignored it because it was just, well, it's just another one of those things. A week later, again, the voice spoke to me, said the same thing, and I again ignored it. And then a third week later, I was doing something again with witchcraft. And this time I was slapped hard across each side of my face. And I didn't feel the pain of it, but the blow of it. And it kind of startled me. And I was like, well, what's going on? And then the voice of Jesus then shouted at me, saying, "Stop what you're doing. Come to know me. You can be forgiven for this." And I kind of knew that this was my last chance, because what you don't know is that
Yeah.
one of these demonic apparitions that appeared to me before all this began, they prophesied to me that I was going to be killed, and they showed me the day and where it would happen. And so I knew,
No.
so I already knew that my life was on a timer and it was running out quick. But because when
What
you're in, go on.
when the demonic manifestation or apparition came through to you, did you hear him? Was it like clairaudient? Was it
Oh,
clairvoyant? Was it
I was
manifested, physical,
I was dropped into like what I call an open vision. So I was literally in another place. It didn't come
different
to me.
dimension?
I went to
Yeah,
it, and I
yeah.
saw it in its realm, and it basically it was like this winged dark creature, silhouetted, and it just basically said, "You're going to die, and this is how it's going to happen. This is where it's going to happen." But I was, I was like, "No, it ain't, isn't going to happen," all this kind of stuff. So when the voice of Jesus shouted at me this time, I knew I was already on the clock as it was, and so there was a urgency and desperation in the voice of God that you've got to do this, and you've got to do it now.
It's your last
Uh,
chance.
kind of, yeah. And so I just kind of like, again, I still didn't really get it, so I just like got on my knees and said, "Oh, sorry, Jesus," and then the next day I was back to my tricks again. But during that week, there was because I've obviously left school by now by about a year or two, and there was a girl I knew from school, and this was brave of her, but she came up to me and she said, "Hey, do you want to come along to church on Sunday?" And I said to her, "You know what? Your Christian God keeps bothering me." I said, "So yeah, I'll go along," and I went along. It was all right. And afterwards, I went to the Christian youth group. So they're all about 16, 17, 18.
Yeah,
And as I was sat in the room, because I was very sensitive to spiritual, what you would term as energies, I sensed this almighty force in the room, which I now recognize as the Holy Spirit. And everyone was connected to him, but they didn't know that they were connected to him. And I'm like, what is going on in here? What's all this about? So I just kept going really because I was baffled. What is this? Um, and then eventually, they told me about the story of Jesus, why he died on a cross to pay for my sins and things. And then I kind of got the message of what Christianity was about. And so it was
yeah.
there that they gave me this book, said, "Hey, just here's a book. And at the end is a little prayer, just, what they call the repentance prayer. Just go home and pray it whenever you're ready." And so one night I went home and I thought I'll do a dress rehearsal prayer. So this isn't the actual prayer, but I'll just say it anyway. Just go through the motions of it for when I actually do it. But anyway, when I did it, suddenly in my mind, I was taken up into this sea of people as far as the eye could see, and and suddenly I became a part of this almighty family, and I saw the arms of Father God come out and pull me in lovingly and tenderly into this family. And even though there were so many of them, I felt just so loved, like I was the only one in the family. It's really difficult to explain.
Like a
And
soul,
so,
like your soul family.
yeah. And so instantly I knew that my so-called first run of the prayer actually was my genuine prayer. Um, and so that's how I became a Christian. But then a few weeks later, as I was riding down to or past the church, there was a girl that again I knew from school, and she went, "Hey, Chris, how you doing?" And I looked over to her and said hello, and then suddenly this was the day that I was supposed to die. And as I looked ahead of me, this was during the daytime, there was this black car, black windows, black headlights, everything black. I mean, any car that looked like this would be completely illegal. And the car went from the right side of the road onto the wrong side of the road and came straight towards me. And as it went straight towards me, I don't know what happened. I can only imagine or surmise the car literally went through me. And then the next thing I knew, I was on the other side of the car, and then the car just vanished. And I was completely unhurt. And then I then realized that that was the place, that was the day that the demon had prophesied that I was going to die. But God intervened, so I didn't die that day. So yippee!
Wow. Hang on, was that car real? That was actually, you said the car vanished. Was that a
Yeah.
manifestation or was it an actual car that hit
Well,
and run? Or
it looked real to me, but it came on, what would have been the normal side of the road, and it deliberately pulled right over to my side of the road and aimed straight for me. And so there's no way that I could have missed. There's no way that I could have gotten around it. It was
Yeah.
literally head on, and I just closed my eyes and then let it gone. And so that was the day that I knew that I was, it was exactly the same place that the demon had shown me where I was going to die, but I didn't die.
That is absolutely mental. I've never
Yeah.
heard a story like this before, and
It
I've
gets worse. It gets worse. Right.
okay.
My whole life is just a complete nut. I mean, when I sit back and think about it, I try not to think about it because it's just too insane. And so after that, I was then really wrestling with depression because, go on.
Wait. Were you injured?
No, no. I mean, literally, I should have been lined up to the middle of the bonnet. But it just never hit me and it just disappeared. So it literally came straight at me. I closed my eyes and then it'd gone. So
Wow.
yeah. Um, and I'm not prone to like making stuff up or seeing things that aren't there. I mean, it was real,
I believe
yeah,
you're talking to a a good witch. You're
yeah.
not I don't yeah I absolutely believe you. Um, so you weren't injured, and then and then what happened? Did you after that incident? Did you think, okay, I've got to right? Was that the turning point?
No, again, I'm so blasé with this stuff. I always have been. It's like, oh well, that didn't happen then. I just get on with my day. It's just, sometimes I think about some of the things I've done in my life, and I'm like, why? That most people would freak out by that, but I just didn't, and I just put it to one side. I thought, oh well, it never happened. It's all good. Moved on. But one of the things that I was really wrestling with because of being involved in such dark stuff before I became a Christian, it really messed with my mental health. And I had a form, some people might not like me saying this, but it's a form of what I call demonic oppression. So there is different reasons for depression. Some people it's chemical, some people it's circumstance and situation. Mine wasn't. There was no rhyme or reason for it. I would be completely fine 1 minute, and then just suddenly I'd feel this dark shadow come on top of me, and then I would just want to take my life. And so that
I
happened.
I have heard of that because I've had clients come to me with a similar thing. So I'm very interested in this and how you would treat that. So it's called demonic oppression.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it was just it was dark forces that would literally come upon me, and you could almost see the room just grow dark, and it was a horrible feeling. And then just this wave of um, hopelessness and pointlessness would come over you, and the only obvious conclusion would be, why wouldn't I kill myself? Because what's the point? Excuse me. And so one particular night it came on me. So I was probably about 18 by now, being a Christian for probably about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months or maybe a year. And it was about 10 o'clock at night in the house. And then this depression came on me again and hit me. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do it now. I'm going to do it tonight. So I went out the house, got into my car, and drove up to a place called Portsdown Hill, which is near Portsmouth. It's like the road goes over the top of it, and then you've got this big drop. And so I found a good place to drive off the edge. Um, Drove up to a roundabout, turned the car around, and drove the car up to about 60 miles an hour. And then I just went off the road, aiming straight off the edge. And I remember as I was going off the edge, I shut my eyes, expecting pain and death. And as the car was flying through the air, suddenly the whole car just flooded with this white light. So my eyes were shut, but suddenly the whole all my retinal vision was just pure white, blinding white light. And then this peace came over me. And then the next thing I knew was I blacked out. And then when I came to, the car had flown through the air and crash landed on its nose and then landed on its roof. And so I was upside down in the car when I came to, and didn't have a scratch on me, had no whiplash, I had absolutely nothing. There was nothing wrong with me at all. And I clambered out of the wreck of the car, and I was pretty angry because I hadn't succeeded. And there I heard the voice of God again speak to me, and he said, "You're not dying because you've got work to do." So I clambered then to the top of the hill, just wearing like a pair of slippers and such, like, because wasn't exactly dressed to die, but there we go. And and then this white car just pulls up. And this all sounds really over the top and really cheesy, but this is what happened. This white car pulls up, and the door opens, and then there's a man in there, and he says, "Would you like a lift home?" And I said, "Yes, please." The next thing I knew was I got in the car, and then everything just became very dreamlike. I didn't tell him where I lived, and he drove me all the way to the door to my house without knowing where I lived. Then I got out the car, then he just drove off. And so I think for me, that was kind of like my first encounter with the angelic.
Yeah,
Um,
an earth
yeah,
angel.
yeah. So, so thanks for that, angels. And that was kind of like my introduction to Christianity. And then it gets more wilder from there. But yeah, go on.
Can we just because there's just so much to unpack. Can we just pause? When the car was flying through the air and you said you saw a white light, can you just clarify you hadn't actually died? Wasn't a near-death
All right, no, no,
experience.
no, no. It was
Okay.
literally as if I could slow down time and it's flying through the air, I can only describe it as like someone switched the spotlight on right behind me, and the whole car just flooded with white light. And then I blacked out. As the light shone, it made me feel so peaceful, and then I blacked out. But I was still flying through the air when that happened to me. The car hadn't
Got it.
crashed or anything. It was literally flying through the air after I left the road. And then the next thing, when I did come to, the car had crashed. As I say, and I was upside down in the car. No, nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with me at all.
Do you think you were pulled out of your body and you had an out-of-body experience and experienced the spirit realm or heaven, whatever you want to call it, and then was put back into the car?
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. I do think it was angelic that did that. I've come across many similar stories where Christians have been protected by angels and things like that happened before.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I don't really know. But all I remember is the light hit, and then the bit when I woke up or came to when the car had crashed. And as I said, so whatever happened to me physically, um, I was cushioned from that blow because that was one hell of a crash, and so it should have broke my neck or something, but nothing, not even whiplash, absolutely nothing.
Incredible. And when you heard the voice of God, was that it wasn't a telepathic inside your head, it was actually outside. You
Yeah,
heard it
it
from,
was more it was
yeah,
more internal, but it was so loud and so
yeah.
clear. I mean, because it was not what I was wanting to hear or expecting
Hmm.
to hear, and for him to then say, "You're not dying, so I've got work for you to do," that literally was the last thing I wanted to hear from anyone. So it's not again like I wanted to just like, oh, I'm just
No,
gonna
no,
fancy God said spoke something to me. It wasn't like that.
no. So Claire audience, but a really loud voice saying,
Yeah,
"You're not
yeah,
dying. I've got work for you to do."
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And then you got driven back by the Earth Angel who just he
yeah,
knew your address. You didn't tell
yeah.
him anything, and he
No,
dropped you off at home.
yeah.
It's incredible. Okay, and then what happened?
So that then obviously made me realize that I've got a serious problem now and I need to sort it out, because I can't be living my life trying to take my life. And as a Christian, it should surely being a Christian, it's if God is as real as the Bible says he is, then surely he can fix this. So I went along to this prayer meeting and these guys, and they said, "Hey, you need to come along to one of our like meetings that we've got at this like kind of a restaurant thing going on in Portsmouth." And so it's what they call a full gospel businessman's fellowship international meal. So they get like some famous speakers from around the world that say their stories, and they're quite powerful stories, as like similar to mine. And then people go forward to get prayer or give their lives to Jesus or something. And I went forward for prayer saying, look, I'm really suffering with depression, tried to take my own life a couple of weeks ago in my car. And so it must have been about 10 to 15 guys, and they just all prayed over me for about 15 minutes. Nothing weird, no jerking around or anything like that, just completely normal. But then I knew something had changed, just something lifted. And then for the next few weeks, it was almost like for the first time I'd become who I really was. I'd always felt like I can only describe it as like you can drive a van, but it's got a limiter on it, so you're not allowed to exceed the speed limit. Like
Yeah.
55 miles an hour. That's how it felt like I was. I felt like I'd had a governor put on me that I could never truly be free to be who I was. And from that day, it'd been taken off. And all of a sudden, I was discovering a new me, which was a little bit
Mm.
disconcerting. You know, I found out I had a sense of humor because I just never thought anything. I literally I didn't find anything funny, and neither did I say anything funny. Um, and I just changed, and then that depression never ever had it ever again. You know, to this day, gone, completely gone. And so, you know, that's a testimony again to the miracle healing power of prayer, you know.
Absolutely. And when they were praying for you in the church, do you feel that that lifted, well, obviously it lifted the depression, but the demonic oppression, did
Oh
that
yeah,
because the power of Christ and the good will
yeah.
dissolve or take away anything demonic like that? Is that how it
Yeah,
works?
well,
Yeah.
it's the authority of the name of Jesus. So it because of what he did on the cross, it destroys and disarms the power of the enemy. And because of that, they just prayed and used that authority. And you know, it was nothing strange like an exorcism or anything like that. It was just they just prayed for me and prayed that God would heal me and set me free. And that's what happens. And you know, something like that, which really plagued me for a very, very long time. That was
Mm.
nothing. That literally for me, that love, that really was a glorious miracle that I could actually never have to worry about that ever again.
Hmm. Yeah, of course, because it led you to trying to take your own life.
Yeah,
It was that powerful.
yeah.
Wow, that's an absolutely insane, incredible story. And it's right. I mean, I've got so many questions. I don't really
Well,
know where
go
to
carry on. You just ask away.
sometimes people come to me and they've had these dark forces or they've been involved in cults or the occult, witchcraft, things like that. Now, I've dabbled in that. That's another story. Not as much as you, but I know this stuff is real. Um, but what advice would you give to anyone that is on the wrong path or in a group of people like a cult or a witchcraft or anything like that? What advice would you give to them from your own experience?
Well, if they're in that situation and they know they need to get out of it, the first thing, you know, at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, the first thing they should do is pray about it and just say, God, if you're real, can you please help me, show yourself, bring someone along my path, do something, please help me. One of the
Hmm.
things I find about God is he'll take people at where they're at. You know,
Mm.
some people aren't ready to have like a whole big revealing of Jesus. Some people they've got to take baby steps and stuff. And so starting with just a simple prayer is good. And also, if they know of any Christians that are switched on to this kind of stuff, maybe just have a chat with them and stuff as well. Um, because to be honest with you, even as a Christian, I know for a fact that most churches really struggle with this stuff. They it because and you'll know this even from your own perspective in that most a lot of people are aware of a spiritual aspect to the universe, but a lot of people are even if they're aware of it, they don't want to talk about it. They feel threatened by it. A lot of
Yeah.
Christians have a kind of a normality bias where they just don't want to wake up to the fact that Satan is real, demons are real, angels are real. That's almost like a bit too much for them to, you know, go about their daily lives. So you find a lot of Christians as well would rather pretend that this stuff isn't real, you know, and it's just the
Yeah.
stuff of fantasy novels like you know, I don't know, sword and sorcery type stuff. But it is real, as you know. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just a simple prayer or chat to someone that you know, maybe a Christian that does understand where they're coming from and is on their wavelength. But there are plenty of Christians out there that have had similar experiences to me. But again, they're most often quite misunderstood by the mainstream Christians.
And that I think is the reason why at that Carol concert, the other speakers, I don't want to sound derogatory, but no, they were all good. But your story was compelling because I could relate.
Yeah.
I could relate to your story. And I have been to churches before. I went on the Alpha course
Okay.
when they found out I was a psychic medium and I did tarot cards. It didn't go down well. And they thought I had the devil attached to me and all of this. And it just put me off. And I remember running out the church and never going back. And I feel the reason I'm saying this, I feel that there are a lot of people out there that can relate to your story, or maybe they have gone down a dark path or drugs and they don't want to be judged, or they do hear voices from the spiritual realms and they need openness and Christianity because we are at a point in this country where Christianity, we're losing our own religion and our
Mm,
culture.
mm.
And if the church, the mainstream church, were more open to this and less doctrine, I just yeah, I just feel it's an issue, and I guess I'm calling on my own experience.
Yeah, and it's a shame that they treat you like that because at the end of the day, that's why we're interested in like going to church or something. It's like, well,
Yeah,
if the gospel's real and it's powerful, whether you've come from a life of debauchery and sin or
yeah,
witchcraft, or you've just grown up as a regular guy that's just interested in Christianity, it doesn't make any difference. You can't be treated
no,
any differently from the next person because everybody, the gift of the gospel is for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you're a witch, prostitute, or whatever. It's there for
yeah.
everybody.
I
So
completely agree with you, and it's so
yeah,
refreshing. That's why I was so compelled to speak to you because it's so refreshing having a reverend who's had this past, an amazing transformation, and so many normal people, people like myself that perhaps haven't had a great past or been into this and that, can actually relate to. So I just think it's wonderful the work that you're doing, and it's another thing I remember on that Alpha course. They I'm quite into the Hare Krishna movement, and
Mhm.
it's um I'm open to a lot of religions, but I was christened, and I do definitely believe in Jesus. And they said I you can't because of those. You have to just believe in Jesus and just be a Christian, and I have to give up the tarot cards, and I can't do my psychic mediumship. And that being a medium can heal so many people, um, to know that our loved ones in spirit are all well. So it's such an important aspect of my life. So I just feel you would have that greater understanding and empathy with those kinds of people. People like myself 10,
Yeah,
15 years ago.
yeah. I mean, when you become a Christian, I before I was a Christian, I had the abilities to be able to know things about people um, in quite graphic detail. But then when I became a Christian, you see, it, no one really quite knows how this works. So I'm just going to go by what I think is how it works. Is that everyone is almost born with certain gifts, whether you may be a musician or you're very good at math or you have a propensity to maybe see things that no one else can see. And so when I became a Christian, my life kind of went quiet for the first 5 years, as I just needed a break from everything occult. But then I went to Israel when I was about 21 by now, and I felt God saying, "You need to go to Israel because I'm going to show you what my will is for you in the land of Israel." And I was like, "Well, it's a long way to go to find that out, but I'll do it." And it was on the last day that I was there that it was this massive conference. People from all around the world had come, and at the end, I had this. It was a Christian conference, and I had this. It was a Canadian guy came up to me and went, "Son," he said, "God has called you to be a prophet to the nations." He said, "I just need to anoint you with oil." And I was like, "Okay, great, yeah, whatever that is." And off he went. And then about 20 minutes later, another guy came up. He was from America, and he said, "Hey, just feel God is saying that He's called you to be an end time prophet to the nations. Can I just pray for you?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of crazy." So I said, "Yeah, okay." And again, everything was all fine. And then suddenly I started getting visions and dreams. But this time, not like what it was when I was involved in the occult. The occult stuff was dark.
Hmm.
This was of a whole another level. Do you want to hear a story? It'll blow your mind.
Yes.
Okay, so
Damn straight. Yeah, please.
so in 2006, um, I what was I doing? I was downstairs in the morning and I was just praying and I fell into this kind of trance-like state. And God showed me these three visions. The first vision, I was driving a pickup truck. And as I looked in the rearview mirror, I could see a volcano exploding behind me. And so then I put my foot down to get to escape. Then the next scene, I saw this pyroclastic flow come down and take out this village. And I saw another shot from another angle, again taking out this village. And I phoned up because I wasn't in church leadership then. I was in a church, and I was like, "Hey guys," spoke to the leaders, said, I had this open vision from God this morning," and they're like, "Yeah, okay, mate, thanks for sharing it with us." And they didn't get it. Anyway, I didn't really think anything of it after that. And then about a week later, I was out at a pub with some friends, and they had one of those big TVs on the wall, and I was like, "What?" And it was at the end of Channel 4 News, And there it was, that volcano, and it was called Mount Merapi. And I was like, no, this can't be real. So I went home and I got online and I checked out about it. And the United Nations were at this volcano because they thought there was going to be, they're not sure if there was going to be a volcanic eruption, but there was a village at the bottom of the volcano. So I did some research, and the villagers wouldn't leave the volcano until someone had had a vision from God. But the guy that had the visions from God had died. And I was like, no, this can't be true. And so I spoke to the Indonesian consulate, and I think they thought I was crazy. And so I managed to actually email. I don't know how I did it, but I managed to email the guys who were the United Nations science team that were on the ground actually monitoring the volcano. I wrote to them. I said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I've had three visions, and they each show that there's going to be a pyroclastic flow. It's going to come down a certain side of the mountain, and it's going to take out a village. Okay, so bear in mind, I didn't even know the village was there until I researched. They actually wrote back to me and said, we've heard your warning. We're going to take it seriously. So they 2 days after that, they evacuated the whole village because now someone had had a vision from God. So they all left, but two scientists remained in the village from the United Nations team. And a couple of days later, it exploded. The pyroclastic flow went down, took out the whole village. The two scientists got killed, and the village was saved. And so this was kind of like my introduction to the world of the prophetic on a whole nother scale. So, people who are like, oh, if I become a Christian, I won't be able to like lay hands on people and see them healed and stuff. When you become a Christian, you instead of doing things in the realm of the psyche, which is the realm of the soul, you do things in the realm of the spirit of the Holy Spirit of God, which
Holy
is
Spirit,
way more powerful than
powerful.
anything that witchcraft can do. Now, obviously, you don't become a Christian to gain more power because that's completely an evil motivation. But it's like if you're gifted in a certain way, it's not unusual for people that have come from occultic or new age background stuff that when they become a Christian, that those gifts become sanctified, but the dial gets turned up to a whole nother level as well. So that kind of like introduced me to a whole nother realm. So another one that happened was I had this vision that I was in a train, a metal train. I've never seen a train like it before. And I was going around this coastline, and then suddenly I saw this tsunami wave coming straight towards me. And I knew, I knew I was going to be, that was it, I was dead. And then the wave hit the train, and then everything went black. But again, I didn't really think anything of it. And then about 2 weeks later, I switched on the TV and watched just as that Japanese tsunami was happening. And later on in the day, that there was the Japanese government said, we're looking for a train, but we don't know where it is. And I was like, no, no, I know where that train is because I saw the landmarks when the train got hit just prior to it getting hit. So I wrote to she phoned the Japanese consulate and said, look, no, it sounds crazy. I said, but I think I know where your train is. And I explained where it was. And again, didn't think anything of it. And that night I stayed downstairs watching the TV all night, really, because it was awful. And I fell asleep. And then I heard this like loud clap in the front room, and I opened my eyes, and there, breaking news live on the ticker tape, and the helicopter flying over it. They found the train exactly where I said it was, and it was exactly the same kind of train that I'd been. I've never seen a train like it before. It was all aluminium, all made of like aluminium. I've never seen anything like it. And so this was kind of like my whole introduction to the realm of the prophetic and stuff. And so for me as a Christian, that's a major part of my ministry now is this kind of whole prophetic
Wow.
thing. And so yeah,
I
so
love
that's
that.
yeah. So that's that's kind of
I
been my baptism of fire, so to speak.
I absolutely love that. And it's just testament to what an amazing prophet that you are to have those worldly visions and actually save people from the volcano as well. You've saved lives there. Um, so with the prophecy and the predictions that you were making, did you always have this as a child? Did you always hear voices and have, well, not necessarily hear voices, but did you have psychic abilities as a child, but you just went down the dark path rather than,
Yeah,
do you think that's what it?
that's what I'm saying. I think it was just something that I do think I do think people are gifted in different ways, and I think I'm not I can't say, and I'm sure a lot of Christians might not like me saying this, but I am I would hazard a guess to say that I do think some people are just wired in a certain way when when they're born, And some people are just sensitive to things, whether it's emotions, whether it's a vibe in the air, or whether they see things. And so I found that when a lot of people become Christians, they either become Christians and they're like, God, I don't want this anymore, and he takes it away, or that it becomes more, the only way I can describe it as being made pure and sanctified. And then you don't see, because I found that in on the dark side of things, everything that I saw was always dark and macabre. It's the only way I could describe it. But since becoming a Christian, everything that I get now is literally riddled with hope, and
Mm,
the warning may be there, but the hope is beyond the warning is hope for tomorrow, sort of thing. And so there's a whole different aspect to it. So yeah, so I would agree with you in a sense, as far as I'm aware. I'm kind of guessing because I don't think anyone really knows that some people do seem to be born gifted, and
yeah.
I think those gifts are like honey traps to bees and wasps. And what I mean by that is
Yes.
the demonic. And so
Yeah.
they find children that have a natural propensity to this. And so, I was like open season for the demonic when I was a kid. And so because of just the way that I saw the world was not like anybody else. Um, you know, and so yeah, so I think that's how it is, but we'll know
I,
one day, I guess.
I think you're right about that because especially if you have psychic abilities and you're on a spiritual journey and you're young because you're searching and your peers aren't into all of that, so you don't have anyone to talk to. So it's very easy to go down the wrong path or to get into witchcraft or cults or but there is the light. Do you know much about the Spiritualist National Union?
I never knew there was a spiritualist national union.
Yeah. So that we have the spiritualist churches around the UK.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
mediums can bring through spirits. So I mean, I'd say the Spiritualist National Union saved me. That and the Hare Krishna movement. I am a Christian, but I'm quite open to other things as well, and just getting on a more positive path. Like you said, the lighter side, rather than going down the spells and the witchcraft and the dark things.
Yes, yeah.
So, in terms of all the demonic things, are there people that you help who are um, involved in witchcraft and things like that? Do they come to you and you pray for them and you lift them out of it?
Yeah, yeah. So we do have so I you when you think of like deliverance ministry, most people think of the movies like The Exorcist and all that kind of stuff. But we come at things from a different perspective. And so for me, I find that a lot of people that do have demonic oppression, and even in rare cases possession, comes about because they've opened their lives either through choice or through circumstance that's opened them up to it. So, for example, trauma can open them up to the demonic.
Yeah.
And when I mean trauma, just you don't have to think too hard about what that could be. And I'm talking about maybe of the sexual nature, being abused, even things like ritual abuse, all sorts of stuff. So my angle I come at things from is, first of all, let's start with inner healing. And as we
Mm,
go through the process of inner healing, that generally breaks the strongholds, which allows the demonic to legally hold on to them. And so once that's broken, then either the demonic just goes or it just starts to manifest and it's easy to come out. So that's kind of like the angle I come at it. I'm not into the whole, right, in the name of Jesus, out you come. I try to like,
yeah.
let's look at the trauma, let's look at inner healing first. And then if that's necessary, we'll do that last. And so that's kind of like my approach to helping people. And for the most part, it's pretty successful. We've had people that have been human trafficked, all sorts of stuff that have gone through some
Wow.
terrible trauma, and have been brought just to a place of joy, in their lives. It's quite incredible, really. Um, and what we're doing isn't weird. It's just actually quite profoundly simple, and it's all biblical. But it just sets people free, and that's what
Yeah,
Jesus came to do. Came to set people free.
absolutely. It's incredibly healing the work that you're doing. I wanted to talk about the political things that are going on at the moment with Christianity. And I just really wanted to get your take on it because it feels as though in this country we both live in the UK, there has been an attack on Christianity, and it feels very much that we are losing our culture, our religion. We are a Christian country. But I mean, I've certainly noticed in the last few years, especially, that there are other religions that tend to dominate. I mean, oh God, there's so many. Like the attack on the Olympic Games. Did you see the Olympic?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the attack on Christianity through the Olympic Games. Um, there's so much, and I'd love to get your view on why this is happening.
So I think with the political movement side of it, it's a really fascinating moment of history that we're in now. And again, this is kind of like that prophetic thing that I've known this was coming, but I could never quite put my finger on what it was, and now I get it. Is that people are waking up to the fact that they're now living on the fumes of yesteryear's Christendom, and there's not much of it left anymore. And suddenly people are waking up and they're having cultural disorientation. They know there's something seriously wrong. They don't know what it is. They can't quite put their finger on it. But here's the exciting thing. So, you've probably heard in the press saying there's this kind of quiet revival going on amongst young people. It's not just young people, it's all different ages. But I knew about this long before anyone had gone to press with it, so to speak, because I was meeting these people and I kept meeting people and they all had the same story. The story was COVID, that woke them up. They knew something
Yeah.
was wrong, something wasn't right. So then they just started becoming more aware. Now, suddenly they were aware that Christianity was being marginalized through lawfare,
Hmm.
and mild persecution. And they were like, and suddenly then they began to realize that, well, without Christianity, Britain is no longer what it is because Christianity has shaped Britain for the last 1400 years. And so then what they do then is they go and get themselves a Bible off Amazon or something. They read it. They read about the gospel. They read about end time prophecy and go, "Ooh, this looks rather sinister and very similar to what's going on in the world now." So they then just become Christians. And so this is kind of like what's going on in our nation right now. And there's a
Mm.
lot of people out there that are slowly but surely waking up to the reality that their cultural identity is going.
Yeah.
And apart from this globalized agenda, I don't want to sound like a tin pot hat conspiracist. So I was seeing this kind of pattern where lots of people were coming to faith just for the simple fact that they realized that Christianity was being marginalized. I just found this fascinating.
Mm. When
And
when
then,
did you notice? When did you have the prophecy about what was going on, and when did you notice people coming to you about Christianity?
well, I for before all this began to kick off, I felt God was saying to me, He said, the future of Christianity in this nation it will be termed as Christian nationalism. He said, although it isn't really, but that's what it will be badged as. And I thought, well, what is even that? What does that even look like? And ironically, now I get called, you're a Christian nationalist, like it's a bad thing. But all it means is I'm a Christian with a heart for our nation. But I understand that politically, whether we like it or not, Christianity has been involved in shaping law and politics in this nation for 1400 years. I mean, when Christianity first started in this nation, they went to the kings first. Once they got the ear of the king and they got the king on board, then they could go out to the villages and then they could have laws that would allow the preaching and the sharing of the gospel throughout the land. So that's how it's always been. But now, it's becoming very obvious now to people that that isn't the case anymore, and Christianity is being marginalized. But the irony is, as society has tried to push us far away from God and far away from Christianity, it's done two things. Firstly, it's created a spiritual vacuum, and that's why another religion has coming in to take its place, because that's the law of nature. You get rid of one thing, nature abhors a vacuum, something else will take its place. And also, we've then replaced kind of like the order and the governance of God now with, I'm probably going to offend a lot of your viewers in saying this, but now what I would call more of a cultural Marxist socialist kind of thing. And people are waking up to the fact that I don't, I don't necessarily want that religion to be ruling over my nation. I'm telling you what people are thinking. I'm not saying necessarily, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to be politically incorrect here. And also, they're waking up to the fact that I don't like where this nation is going. I don't. If this is it, if this is the future of our nation, they just know that as my son would say, we're cooked, right? If we carry
Yeah.
on going down that road, we're done for. And people are waking up to this. There's a lot of people still not
Mm.
awake yet. But Tommy Robinson, he realized very a little while back that he started noticing lots of Jesus is Lord flags at some of his rallies. And he then realized that he kind of moved from being atheistic to then being a cultural Christian. What is a cultural Christian? It's someone that acknowledges, doesn't necessarily believes in God, but acknowledges that Christianity has shaped this nation to what it is. And so being a cultural Christian is someone that enjoys the benefits that Christianity has brought to this nation. You know, like women's rights, freedom of speech, all of these kind of things, the NHS, schools, and the rule of law, so many different things. And so and now through that, then he Tommy Robinson himself, he's met some friends of mine who helped him when he was in prison recently and brought him to a place of faith. And so now he understands that Christianity is really important for this nation, that he's bringing like-minded Christians that understand what's required for the hour and know that it is, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, Christianity and politics are going to have an uneasy relationship with each other because we need both. Because without good politics, we're cooked, but without Christianity, we're cooked. And so we
Mm.
need to bring those two things together. And so we are seeing something that does look like a politicized form of Christianity, but it isn't really. What my
But
heart is as a Christian is I'm trying to put Christianity back into politics. But the problem that's
mm,
wrong with Christianity at the moment, especially in the Church of England, is their Christianity has been politicized. So
yes.
when we had that Christmas rally that you saw down the road at St. Paul's Cathedral, they had a rubber dinghy with Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, not the actual Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, in a life raft, wearing a life jacket and saying that Jesus is a refugee. That's politicized Christianity.
Yes.
We weren't there to do that. We were there just to
No,
tell the truth about Christianity. And so
absolutely.
a lot of yeah, go on.
Yeah, but the irony is they spin it and make them seem like the real Christians, and why, Chris, why are we in this state? What is the agenda or the
Um,
agendas?
well, you see this throughout history. I mean, not to pull the Bible card here, but it is, I would call it an antichrist spirit. And so
Yeah.
antichrist doesn't necessarily mean the antichrist, but an antichrist spirit is an attitude that is anti-Christian and antichrist. And for example, and again, I don't want to sound like a tin pot kind of guy, but it's just true that most of the Labour Party are Fabians. Do the
Yes,
research
Fabian
in
Society.
yeah. So their first ever public articles or magazine articles that they published in the 1800s stated emphatically they want to do away with the Judeo-Christian Western civilization and replace it with a Mohammedan Eastern culture, and replace it with that instead. So there, and I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there does seem to be an agenda here where they're trying to replace the Judeo-Christian value system and replace it with an Eastern system instead, or a Mohammedan system. And that's literally what we're seeing.
It is what we're seeing because the amount of propaganda for Ramadan and Eid on every single London bus and the adverts and stuff, it's insane. You wouldn't think that we are a Christian nation built on Christian values, especially with everything that's happening with free speech as well.
Yeah. And when you go to, again, it sounds like I'm being racist, but I'm not. I'm just being a social commentator. So that when you go to places like Tower Hamlets and you see signposts in a non-English language, that's concerning.
Yeah.
And so this is why a lot of people are waking up to there's something seriously wrong, and that's what I call cultural disorientation. They're suddenly waking
Mhm.
up to a world that they don't recognize anymore. And so we're in really interesting times. And so I think probably the next 5 to 10 years are going to be very dramatic for this nation and probably for a lot of Europe, actually, because they're all here hitting the same skids as we are. And so, and for me as a leader, I feel that and have been dragged into this as well, so whether I like it or not, I'm a part of this movement now. And it's a privilege to be a part of this movement. But it means that people like myself, we get a lot of name calling. I was on BBC Four a couple of weeks back, and I had a C of E vicar really lay into me because he just couldn't stomach the fact that God would use someone like Tommy Robinson or or this Christian nationalism, like it's a terrible thing. And I had to say to him, you do realize that you're a Church of England vicar. You have the king who is the head of state, who is the head of your church. If there's anyone guilty of Christian nationalism, it's not me, it's you, because the Church of England is a Christian national church in the sense of it's the church of the
Yeah,
nation. It says it in the name.
yeah,
Um, but they just don't see it. But yeah, so there's a lot of Christians that don't like what we stand for, but we're not troublemakers. We're not contentious. We're not racist. We're none of the above. We're not misogynistic, Nazi, fascist pigs. We're just we're just concerned for the state of our nation. And for me as a Christian, I want to see Christianity brought back into the fore of our nation. I don't want everyone to become a Christian or anything like that, but I do want Christianity to be brought back into our culture again, back to the fore as it was. So for those that don't want to believe in God, can enjoy the benefits of cultural Christianity, and those that do want to believe in God can enjoy Christianity. And I don't even have a problem with other religions being in our nation, but we are at a very fundamental turning point for as a nation that we are losing our identity and our culture, and we're not a
yeah,
global village. We are a nation, and
yeah.
therefore, within the context of that nation, there are people that are indigenous to that nation, there are cultures to that nation, etc., etc. So, I mean, you know all this stuff, you know all these arguments.
I do, and it's incredibly frustrating. The way I put it is, if if all of England went to Nigeria and they put England colonized Nigeria and they lose their idea, there'd be outrage.
Yeah, that's
But
right. Yeah.
there seems to be an anti-white racism, anti-Christian racism that's going on. And you know what? I'm not really afraid to say it anymore. I used to be a bit nervous about saying it, but I think everyone, if you can't see it by now, I don't know. It's just it is, but it is very worrying. It is worrying, and that's why I wanted to speak to you about your predictions as well, because
Okay.
like
Yeah.
you, I get prophecy and predictions, and I would love to discuss what you see coming for this country and Europe.
Um, so for this country, I think things are going to get really bad before they get better. So, I mean, I first started getting visions and dreams for this nation 25 years ago. And everything seems to be converging at this point. So 25 years ago, one of my dreams was several of my dreams I saw an Islamic uprising, um, which 25 years ago was ridiculous. There just wasn't, there's just no way that could ever happen. Um, and then I had dreams that America did something to Iran, which really upset the Muslims. And again, this is all 25 years ago. And that was one of the triggering points that started this Islamic uprising and a war with Iran as well. And so at that time, none of that seemed relevant. But now, with what America and what's happening in Iran right now, I can see very quickly and very, very easily how this could fly ahead. I'm not saying this is going to happen now because I don't know, but what I'm seeing now is very similar to what I saw in my dreams 25 years ago. Economic collapse also, and also the collapse of our current government. And in part, and this is the bit probably people won't like, but I believe that this is a chastisement of God to our nation to humble us so that we would turn from our wicked ways and we'd come back to him. And in the process of coming back to him, he would restore this nation, and he would help rebuild this nation. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, there's so much we could talk about on this particular issue, but all these messages that I believe I get, although they're quite hard, but they're all littered with hope that we've got to get through this period so that so that our nation can be rebuilt into something beautiful again and into something strong again. But even in that, there's warnings as well. Um, so that's kind of where I see things are going. I think over the next few years, it's going to be pretty tough in this nation. But through that cooking pot that's going to come, a lot of the dross and the evil and stuff will be brought to the surface, like the root the Pakistani rape gang, Muslim rape gang thing, things like that will all come to the surface, and we will just see the filth and depravity that's been going on in our nation that's been brushed under the carpet for so long. And I think people will be so shocked and disgusted by it that I think it will literally put a lid on liberalism for a long, long time. And I'm talking about hard left liberalism, not talking about
Yeah.
old school liberalism. And so yeah, so I see many things all sort of coming to pass, and everything seems to be aligning. Bear in mind, a lot of these visions and dreams I've had for a long time, they all seem to be converging on this particular moment of time, which is just quite interesting, really.
It's really interesting. And did you see in your prophecy, did you see light at the end of the tunnel, that it would be all right at the end? Like, was it happy ending? Is there hope?
Well, yes and no. So yes, what will come out of this, I mean, for example, even about getting on for probably 10 years ago, I was getting prophecies that a new party would emerge out of the chaos of government, and God was calling it a party of reform that would bring reform. Um, Now I know because of these dreams that reform are only going to be in for a short period of time, and then it will move on to the next person, but we will see things shifting radically politically from hard left to maybe more of a center left, and then more to a center right, over probably the next course of 10 to 15 years. And that the point is that this nation will come back to a place of strength. And like I said, not everyone's going to believe in God. Not everyone's going to believe in Jesus or anything like that. But I do believe that God is, the Bible talks about when Jesus returns, he judges the nations. And there are two types of nations in the Bible. Matthew 25 says there are sheep nations and goat nations. Goat nations are the evil nations. The sheep nations are the good nations. And so I believe God's heart for this nation is to be a sheep nation. But at the moment, we're on a one-way ticket to Goatsville, and so to get off that track, some major things need to happen to our nation to bring us back on track. And I think things like this whole Tommy Robinson movement and the rise of reform and all this sort of stuff, things that I saw a long time ago, are now all coming into play to be the instruments that are going to start slowly but surely changing the direction of this nation.
I really, really hope so. And oh God, I've got so many questions. I'm just conscious of time, but do you feel that there is a danger that another religion will take over this land?
Um, like I said, in the dreams that I had, there was an Islamic uprising because of something that America did to Iran. But it didn't last very long. It was short-lived. And then what happened? See, there's two extremes here. So you have that, and then the other extreme I saw in another vision was something that equally didn't please God, was that a government came to power and they were getting rid of the migrants, but they were doing it in a really unhuman, disrespectful, and cruel way. And God wasn't happy with that either. So we'd gone from so one of the things that we need to watch out for is that we don't go from hard left to suddenly to hard right. You see
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Because you're going from one extreme to the other.
extremism. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not good. So one of the things that this is why I feel like part of my job is the reason why I'm getting involved in this Christian nationalism is to stop a sectarian ethno nationalism take over this nation, which will be really dangerous.
Yeah.
Um, and I think God it wouldn't want that. And so I can see this complexity coming down the line that I think that we as Christians and we in what we do, we've got to try and steer things so that God's will come about. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and it's going to be brutal, but there is light, there is hope at the end of the tunnel, and that Islamic uprising will be short-lived, but it will
Okay.
happen. Yeah, and I saw dreams where literally people were terrified. They were in their houses because they had an unknown army on the streets because they don't wear fatigues. You don't know if you've got one Muslim who's a nice guy or one who's out to harm you. You just don't know who's who. And so the nation was brought into a place of fear, but that lasted for a short period of time, and then things began to change. But I think sometimes things have to get really bad to wake people up because there's a lot of
Yes.
people out there just like no, no, la, 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 la. That will never happen. That's
Yeah.
not real. You're just being a racist. You're just being a misogynist, blah, blah, Nazi, fascist. And then they'll wake up and think, oh, heck, what you said is actually happening in my nation. This is not right. And so, but what we do need to be careful of is we don't go from hard left to hard right.
Yes. No extremism on any side. With
Mm.
the Islamic uprising that you saw, do you have a timeline for that, and how long roughly w would it last for?
Yeah, I don't know because it was all mixed in with the war with Iran, sorry. It was all mixed in with
Right.
that. So yeah, I don't quite know how long it went on for, but the sense that I got was that it was short-lived, and the
Okay.
persecution that they brought onto this nation was relatively short-lived. But nevertheless, people were in a lot of fear.
Okay. And for the economic collapse that you saw, what
Yeah,
timeline, how bad are we talking? Like recession, depression, complete.
depression. Yeah, depression. So what happened again? I saw what happened in 2008, 3 months before 2000, and is it 2007, 2008? I can never remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
had
had I had a prophecy very similar, so I'm curious. Yeah.
well, I was just minding my own business, going to bed one night, and an angel appeared by my bed. I didn't see him, but he was stood there, and I could sense his presence. And he spoke to me. And as he spoke to me, the words were burnt into the retina of my eye. So you know when you see a bulb and you blink and it's still there, it was like the words and the date was stamped into my mind. And he told me the exact date when it would happen, and said on
When?
this, I can't remember the date. It was like some September the 18th or something. He said on this date something really bad's going to happen to the British economy. And so I took the day off work, got a bag of popcorn, watched the stock market, and the stock market collapsed. I think it was that particular week was when Bear Stearns collapsed, and then various other
Oh,
things collapsed.
this was 2008,
Yeah,
2007, 2000. Oh,
yeah,
okay, okay, right, yeah.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
that's what then led to the stock market crash in America, where it fell 777.77 points, which is nothing compared to what it's going to do.
What's
And
it gonna
so,
do? What?
well, in my dreams, it sent the British economy back to the 1960s. So that's pretty brutal.
Okay.
But things did slowly but surely come back to some sense of normality, but it will never go back to as it is now. But again, in part, all of this as
I mean,
well, because go on, you go,
I
Karen.
mean,
I'm waffling. I'm
it's
just waffling on.
no, no, no. You said it's never going to come back to how it is now. I mean, things are pretty dire now, economically in this country.
What I mean is that we will never probably have the wealth that we have now. So the fact that you and I can just blow a tenner on Starbucks if we want to, that won't be an option in the future. It'd be like you wouldn't even dream of being so frivolous with your money in the days ahead. You know,
Wh-
it's gonna be hard. But God's
when is
always,
this going to happen?
I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to wish I could predict it, but I have no idea. But God has always said to me consistently, it will be the worst of times, but it will also be the best of times. Because in that, we will see wonderful things happening to our nation as well. Wonderful hopefulness, wonderful joy as things change. Because sometimes when things have gotten so bad, the only way to fix it is to root out the cancer and then rebuild things. And so that's what we're going to have to do. Unfortunately, things are just going to have to be rebuilt. And that means sometimes you're going to have to knock those old structures down. It's painful to watch, you know.
When I know you said you don't have a timeline exactly, but are we talking in our lifetimes, in the next
Oh,
five
yeah. Yeah.
years? If you were a betting man, what date would you put on it if you
I,
had
I,
to?
yeah, I've always been, to be fair, I've been consistently wrong on the stock market collapse because I've seen it for like 25 years. Same time when I saw all the Islamic uprising stuff. So it's something that's kind of plagued me and haunted me for a very long time. And I've seen it come, you know, and with the 2008 thing, I thought that was it, but it wasn't. That was just a blip compared to what's coming. But I would certainly say we are fast heading towards it now. You know, we've got hyperinflation. You know, the government keeps saying, oh, inflation's coming down. But if you look at those inflation reports, what they do is they take out the price of food and
Yeah,
energy out of the CPI index, right? Just to be boring here, which means the actual real rate of inflation they reckon is actually more between 9.5 to 12%, not 3.5%. And so the real squeeze on people is becoming very clear. And we're seeing the same signs as we saw in 2007, where lots of shops are starting to shut down.
yeah,
Businesses are changed. It's becoming more a service-based industry. So coffee shops are just appearing everywhere. We don't have any real kind of shops in certain shopping centers. So we're starting to see all the indicators. The bond markets are doing terribly. They're worse than the Liz Truss mini budget.
yeah,
But no one's talking about it. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so I think things are coming and they're coming soon. And so as for us as a church, what we've done is we've got a thing called Project Storehouse. So you remember the Bible story of Joseph and how he was basically used by God to help Egypt and help the Israelites. And so we're just copying that vein. Again, that's to do with dreams that God gave me about being a Joseph in a time of famine. And so we've got our own farm now, so we grow our own food and stuff like that. Not like a doomsday cult, it's just a social project. Everyone loves it. But we grow our own fruit and veg and things so that we can look after ourselves and look after people that need it as well. So we're trying to be practical about this
Fantastic.
as well, not just be
Yeah,
like out there with the fairies.
fear-based.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Any advice for the economic collapse? Invest in crypto, gold, just the
Yeah,
usual.
I don't know, but I I would say I wouldn't. I know some people that love crypto because they think it's exempt somehow and that they can get around it. But I think things are going to be so bad that I just, every commodity, all these things can be shorted, which crypto can be. And I think because crypto isn't actually based on anything real, just like every other stock market dot bubble, everything .com bubble that came around, they all collapsed because what they thought things were valued at ends up not being that at all. And of course, it creates a massive crash. So I think
Yeah.
we've got a lot of stuff coming down the line. So if I was to say, what do you invest in? Not that I would do it myself, but property and gold is probably the few things that you could put your money in where even if it does lose value, the chance that it will increase in value again over time.
I agree with that. And in terms of Christianity, do you feel that Christianity, obviously there's a revival at the moment, but in the future, for your prophecy, will this be a proper Christian nation again and better than it is now?
Yes, I believe that we're going to see the biggest Christian revival and reformation that's been witnessed in modern times. We're hearing about and even seeing now is nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing compared to what's coming. Because what's coming will wake people up. They'll just begin to realize, actually, I need God. I need God in my life. I need him now. And I just think many people are going to turn to God in this hour. And I think it's all of this stuff in the mix that's just going to help reshape and reforge this nation back to the way and put it back on track. So yeah, there is more in all of this as well, but we don't have time to go there. But yeah, it's certainly fascinating subject.
I love that. So basically, some really, really tough times, but it's going to get worse, but then it's going to get better, and
Yes. Yeah.
we'll be back to a proper Christian nation.
Yeah.
Not fundamental, not you know what I mean.
Yeah, no,
Not
yeah, and not we're not trying to introduce a theocracy.
no.
And whatever people think. I mean, Christianity's never been like that. Well, actually, that's not true. It has actually, when we had like the rise of the Catholic kings, all that sort of stuff. But it's never going to go back to that. It's just going to be where Christianity, the average guy on the street, many people are just going to turn back to God, and that's just going to be better for society, better for our lawmakers, better for our schools, our colleges, our universities and these people will just when you infect the whole system with Christians, as in politics or the legal system or our education system, where at the moment it's mostly full of radicalized liberals, sure we'll make mistakes, but it's going to be a heck of a lot better than what it is now.
That's so good. You've made my day. I'm so glad. And actually, your predictions are in alignment with mine, so it's reassuring.
Cool.
Um, Chris, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me today. If anyone is watching this that wants to reach out to you and is maybe on an unconventional path or going down like black magic, the occult, witchcraft, are you open for them reaching out to you? How can they contact you?
Yeah, so the best way to contact me is because I run a church, so I've got my own admin lady. So if you email admin at lwcn.uk, that's admin at lwcn.uk, and she will pass you on to me and stuff. So yeah, that's how you can do it. Also got a YouTube channel as well called Chris Wickland's, and so there's lots of prophetic stuff on there as well as sermons or prophetic sermons and things as well to get your teeth into.
That's great. And I'll link everything below. But Chris, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me. Yeah, I got goosebumps when I was hearing your stories and all the prophecy, the volcano and everything. It's just absolutely incredible. And I love the transformation of your life. You've alchemized all of that dark stuff into something really positive and just helping and serving humanity. So thank you.
That's all right, and thanks for inviting me on the show. It's been a pleasure to speak to you.
And you as well. Thanks so much, Chris.
All right. God bless. Bye bye.
God bless. Bye.